there, and we didn't even do the machine. We walked so far. Thank God we were 18, 19 years old. We walked so far.
Ask Parker how that went the other day.
You got one nice one for the gram. Congratulations, Parker, for your nice fish on the gram. Maybe I'll flash it in the video. But yeah, that's kind of the other thing. We What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Hook One Pod. Happy New Year. We're back in the studio. We've got a great guest with you guys this week. You might remember Kody before. We did the hand lining episode, didn't we?
Yep.
A long time ago.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago, or a year ago anyway.
Yeah, so if you really want to take it way back, Kody joined us for the hand line episode, which was actually a really good episode on hand lining and basically that technique of catching fish in the river. And if you don't know what that is, maybe we'll do another one this summer.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's not for right now. Today, we've got a totally different topic we're touching on. Something that the Hook One Pod has never touched on in 3 years. And I don't know, something must be going on. There must be something in the air because I'm actually excited to talk about it. Before we get to that, though, I've got to do my due diligence, guys, and I've got to thank everybody that's made this possible for us. So, as you guys know, the discount codes are going to pop up right here, and we need to give a huge thank you to Whitewater. We need to give a huge thank you to Papa's Pilar. They were awesome. We gave away some bottles of rum at the fishing show. We gave away some bottles over our Facebook Live last time, so they've been an awesome partner of ours, as well as Cortland Line and Great Lakes Anglers Co. So, guys, if you could support who's supporting us, obviously that means the world, because if it wasn't for those guys, who knows if this podcast would even still be going. And obviously if it wasn't for you guys. So a huge thank you to you guys. We're sitting here after the new year.
Cold.
It's cold. The fishing show's gone. We've done enough fishing show episodes, so we're not going to do a fishing show episode. So today we had Kody come on because we're going to talk about something that's definitely in his wheelhouse.
Oh, yeah.
I've gotten away from it the last few years, but, well, really like this whole business started. Kody was a big guy that got me into the boat in the first place and got me kind of on this journey. But with that came ice fishing. So today, that's what we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, it's time. It's shaping up right now.
I know a lot of you guys are probably thinking hell must have froze over. It's so cold, because that's what we're talking about is ice fishing. And I've been very vocal about bashing ice fishing for the last couple years just because it's been open water, and that's kind of what we've been doing. But
He's afraid of the cold now.
I'm getting soft. Some would say I'm getting soft. But yeah, man, we're going to talk about ice fishing, specifically perching. Some of this episode is going to go a little bit into the spring and how good the perch fishing was last spring and kind of what we're looking forward to. Because, I mean, you could let them, like, you could let us know just as well as I could, but the spring and the fall were incredible.
Yeah, I think the spring is mostly when I do most of my perch fishing. It was one of my better years, but that's all dictated on watercolor. We had some wind, pretty hard wind the last couple of years, but I know the guys that fish in the fall. I mostly hunt, but it was the best fall they ever had, even for some old timers.
That's true. Usually you're in the duck blind come fall.
Yep.
I spent a lot of time chasing them this year all around the lake, more so on the south side of the lake on the Canadian side. But the quality of fish was unbelievable. Big perch.
Yeah, we got a lot of big perch around right now. Some of the biggest buckets I think guys are catching, even on the American side. I mean, usually it was go to Canada to catch big perch, and now the tides are turning a little bit.
Yeah, it's good to see. It's good to see, and I don't know if it directly ties in with that, like, you know, now our limit's 25 instead of 50, because Canada is still 50, and that's where a lot of guys are fishing and taking their fish from.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the untapped fishery during COVID and just getting some year classes through.
Yeah, that's absolutely true as well, especially because my biggest pet peeve, and guys, we'll start the ice fishing episode out like this. My biggest pet peeve, and I get it, but is when you walk by someone's hole and there's, 2 dozen cigars, just a bunch of baby perch sitting on the ice, and it's like, the same guy that left those baby perch on the ice is the guy complaining that we don't have any big fish. But it's tough, right? Because you don't want to scare the school. That's kind of the whole thought process behind it.
Yeah, I bring a little 3-gallon bucket sometimes, but like if the water's deeper, like over in Canada, I'll just toss them right back as long as they're alive right away. and they don't bother the fish.
Yeah. And see, the difference is like over here, guys. So like right now, the fishing is incredible from Metro Park. And if you're familiar with Lake St Clair, then this will make a ton of sense to you. But from Metro Park, really all the way through Anchor Bay,
Yep.
over by the Palms boat launch, over by the raft, Cabana Blue, guys are having a lot of success in like 6 foot of water. So that's when you kind of run into that. You're shooting fish back down the hole.
Yeah, 6 foot, 2 foot. That once you get over 12, it's then you can really start tossing them back and not worry about it.
Now, over here, like on our side of the lake, you notice a lot of guys are fishing shallower, right? Because Anchor Bay tends to be shallow. It takes good ice to get out to that 12 foot.
Yeah, I mean, Anchor Bay, I think a lot of guys fish like 5 to 8 feet, but there's also some days where we're fishing 18 to inches to 2 feet of water. You just never know where they're going to be.
No, I mean, that was always fun when you'd get that good clear ice. You could walk around and watch the school of perch.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of going through, but you know, it's getting busy in the store. I have finally, after 4 years, have brought in quite a bit of ice fishing stuff. I mean, we're not going crazy in the store. We've got a lot of the necessities, I like to call it, right?
Yeah, everything you need to catch bluegill, perch, crappie, even the occasional walleye definitely is in the store now for ice fishing.
Those guys out by Metro, and even I talked to a guy that was in Anchor Bay the other day, and they were catching them just right on slab grabbers, which is really similar to what I have tied on here. And we'll go over the baits and the lures here in a second, but you know, slab grabbers, diamond willows, Ken spoons, Widowmaker just sent us a bunch of tungstens that look incredible. I actually, just before we sat down for this episode, I was just getting the display out, so I haven't even gone through to pick all the good ones out yet. But the baits, we downsize quite a bit. We downsize.
Yep.
But what's kind of your, you know, for the guys that live around here, whether you're fishing from Metro to Anchor Bay, is there something specific that you're looking for? Are you just drilling a hole in a spot to start and then kind of pinning it in from there? What's kind of your approach when you get on the ice?
I go in kind of the mindset of not really knowing where they're at. Usually, sometimes get some intel, but even if you catch them one place one day, usually the next day you're moving. You're constantly moving. I mean, if I sit at a hole for 5 minutes, that's a long time.
Yeah. That was one thing when I first started ice fishing with you. It was like everyone would always talk about, once you get in the shanty with the heater. And when we were fishing, it was like, what shanty? Dude, you got a bucket with 3 rods and your little tackle bags in there, and it's just move. I mean, and we've had some great days out by Selfridge, out by Metro, right here in basically the backyard in Anchor Bay. But moving and staying on top of those schools, and what you're going to find is a lot of the times the bigger fish can be very sluggish.
Yeah, for sure. And you got to know when you get in the right area where the fish are. Sometimes you just got to sit it out and let the schools come through to you. And I usually get impatient. I got to go find them other load.
Yeah, you're trying to find it. Well, I mean, and there's times too where like some guys will bring a spear out there once spearing season starts. But you'll be sitting there jigging and you're watching these, 10 to 12 inch fish like nudging your bead spoon.
Yeah.
They won't eat. Next thing you know, a 6-incher comes out from under the ice and just hammers the bait.
Yeah. Another thing too, when we're talking about the different way the fish act, sometimes in 4 feet of water, all the big fish are a foot under the ice.
Yeah, that's something super interesting. And a lot of the times, like when you're fishing Anchor Bay, most of Metro, like that, all up in here in St. Clair, it's typically a sandy bottom. So it can be harder when you're on a bucket unless the conditions are right.
Yeah.
But for those guys that are shanty fishing, I mean, when you get something up over the hole, you can see straight down. You're not fishing deep. The water's typically super clean, and it's a sandy bottom. And you'll watch how those fish are acting where, we were talking about it today with a customer, but sometimes you'll see those lone fish coming through and they're tight to the bottom. And rarely are you going to get those fish to bite. It can be very tough. But if you see them coming in and they're stacked up, especially those ones that are off the bottom, they seem to be the ones that are much more aggressive.
For sure.
To get those to bite and to kind of bring them towards your lure, is that kind of more of like where you start with your aggressive jigging, especially with like your bead spoons? Get that spoon covering the water column? Or not necessarily?
For me, the biggest thing I think is the attraction is I like a spoon that really flutters outside the hole. So like the different cuts fall differently. And the best style I've had is the styles that fly way outside the hole, and then you let it swing back into the hole. And usually on the swing is when you get your bigger fish as it's
Yeah,
coming in. You can watch your line. It's not so much as a pop. It's not so much a bite as it is watching your line move.
and what he means by cuts, guys, is like you can see this beaded spoon here. This is like their fan cut, so it's straight across the top. And of course, I'm not prepared. You guys have watched this podcast long enough to know that. But there's other cuts. They make diamond cuts. They make straight cuts. What else am I missing?
Bottle cap.
The bottle caps. Yeah, and then this is a slab grabber here. So it's just your traditional spoon, and then all it does is it has a hard bead right here that acts as the bait. And so what he's saying is when you jig this thing up, the way that, especially these fan cuts, they seem to go.
They go outside.
I like
pretty good.
We talked about it before we sat down. I like the skinnier fan cuts.
Yeah.
There's like a shorter, fatter one.
Yeah, I think there's 1.5 inches, and I think that's the 2-inch.
Yeah.
I really like the 2-inch.
This one here is a 2-inch, and this one's here's a straight gold. So slab grabber, they make gold, they make silver, and then they make one that's called a drain pipe.
Yep.
That's half and half. So you got silver on the front, and then it's a gold on the back.
And they're heavier.
Yes,
Yeah.
they are. That kind of shines. The heavier ones seem to shine, especially when you're in that deeper water. Whether it be like Lake Simcoe or if you're going up to Saginaw Bay, you're fishing deeper. And speaking of those bodies of water, they're both fishing really well right now. Saginaw Bay's got a ton of ice. Guys are going up, over 12 miles out.
Yeah, just starting to catch up on the walleye up there, and guys been getting perched for a little while up there now. So
yeah, and then Simcoe, the ice is good. From what we're understanding, you were up there recently. It was tough until you found them.
Yeah, it was. They did good on. I was up there for a couple of days. The first day we did really good. I scooted all over the place. I go up there to chase the big fish.
Yeah.
So I had to come back and grind out my limit in the middle of the day. But the second day, all those fish moved on us. Second day, we fished probably 3 miles away from where we did the first day.
3 miles?
Yeah.
Oh my! Yeah. And I said you were covering water.
Yeah, it was a lot of driving.
The difference in those Simcoe fish, I mean, they're just built different.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? We've caught perch all around here. From Metro all the way around Anchor Bay. We've gone to the Canadian side and fish over towards Mitchell's. But those fish in Simcoe, and I have yet to get to Simcoe. That's a plan we've been talking about for a while. Unfortunately, with the show, I wasn't able to make it that weekend. But those fish, like how we talk about how lake trout up at Standard Rock are just built different. Like we catch big ones out in Lake Huron, but they're just different. Those Simcoe fish are just different, dude.
Yeah, they're big, and you get schools of big ones.
Now, typically, how deep are you fishing out there?
It's funny up there. It's like it's actually fishing, I call it, because they actually got structure and shoals and all that stuff. Versus Lake St Clair is like fishing in a fishbowl.
100%.
And usually we start up shallow, typically, and work your way out depending on where you're at. If there's a shoal nearby or you're fishing a mud flat up there, fish act like fish. Versus here, I think they kind of just scoot through the fishbowl.
Yeah, and that was going back to what we touched on earlier. I think that's why it's so important to get off your bucket or get out of your shanty and on your bucket, I should say, and hop around and find those fish. Because rarely when you go, I mean, when you get a good freeze and that ice is clear, you can walk all around Anchor Bay, and you'll be hard pressed to find a weed bed or anything like that. I can guarantee you're not going to find any shoals or mud flats or anything like that. Yeah. And it's all sand.
Over here too, if it's clear ice, usually the perch are not there.
No.
Too much commotion. You want white ice or jagged ice or
and that's been a big thing, guys. Yeah, you need it. You need it. And do not get hung up on like where the crowds are. Like obviously if there's crowds there, then you would think that there's fish there. I mean, it's the same thing that we preach when we're boat fishing, right? Like don't just pull into the drift or the spot with a bunch of boats.
Or don't yell you caught a walleye.
Or do if you're not catching anything. Get all the people over there and then you can leave. But get away from those tents. You want to get away from the shacks. You want to get away from where a lot of those people are fishing, where those fish are unpressured. Because like you said, there's going to be a lot of different spots where you might find, especially if you're on clear ice, if there's any shove ice or if there's any white ice or if there's any snow on the ice, it's like casting a shadow. You can use that to your advantage. But if you're just kind of clumped in with everybody else, maybe that school of fish is sitting there and bouncing from hole to hole, but I have not found near the amount of success like sitting in with all those people. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, around here on our lake, not really. Sometimes up at Simcoe in that deeper water, you can get in a pack of shanties and really tear into them, or at least have a decent day. But around here, only on the Canadian side, when you start to get in some of that deeper water, does it seem like you can slide in a pack and pick away on some fish.
Right. And there is something to be said about, especially with a school of perch, like, when we're in the boat, we're using the mutter to kind of keep that school there.
Yep.
There is something to be said with like, if there are more baits in the water, then the school will stick around longer. Like I've heard guys tell stories when they're alone and they've got a hard time like keeping the school basically, and that's where you're back on your bucket chasing them. But again, it's deeper water.
Yeah.
It's hard for that to make a difference if you're sitting in Anchor Bay and you're fishing 6 foot of water or less, and it's crystal clear. Like the people walking, the people drilling holes, God forbid somebody's out there with a spud.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like those conditions are going to push those fish away.
Yep, for sure. For sure.
And then another bait that's super simple that we use a lot of the times, that I like to use, especially when those fish can be finicky, is just a simple little tungsten jig.
Yep.
I mentioned that we got a bunch in from Widowmaker. We have all different sizes and shapes and all that fun stuff. This here is just basically a dropper, is what they call it. It's their dropper jig. But whether it's glow or, they've got ones that look like bugs and they've got ones that look like they're like flat,
Yeah. Yep. Plastic.
Yeah. Yes.
All plastic on there.
Yeah. Something different. And then we'll just tip those with like a spike or a wax worm. Apparently we've got a national shortage of wax worms. So your local bait store is not just making that up, whether it's us or somebody else. I heard someone come in the other day and they were giving somebody a hard time for not having wax worms. And I'm like, well, put me on the list too, because apparently we're having a hard time growing waxies. But there's plenty of spikes. You just tip these things with a spike. Have you noticed that sometimes, not a minnow, but have you noticed that like sometimes bugs make that difference as opposed to like a beaded spoon? Or do you fish plastic?
I fish plastics if I fish a tungsten, but to be honest with you, if they don't bite a spoon, I'm on to the next hole for the most part.
Yeah, jig
and rapalas, I'll play with once in a while if the fish are big, but tungsten fishing's too boring for me.
Yeah, it's very finesse. There's a lot of just this.
I will do it though if the fish are big.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're gonna do what works.
Yeah.
What's your thought on minnows?
Minnow fishing's too boring for me.
See, it's like I get guys that come into the store and they're like, "Man, I can't get these fish to bite. Like, you think a minnow would work?" And I have too many times, especially when we were younger, sat in a hole with a tiny little jig and a minnow on there, and the minnow's just swimming. I mean, as natural as can be, and the fish just don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, I think the last time I used a minnow was the last time my dad took me ice fishing.
It's true, though. I mean, the only time I will say, sometimes I'll use a minnow head.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm using a slender spoon or if I'm using a dew jigger or jig and wrap, anything like that, I'll use I'll cut the head off.
Yeah, walleye minnows for walleye fishing, but not for perch.
No, for perching, I'm 100%. I mean, it's a beaded spoon. It's a tungsten. Now, as far as plastic goes, because I don't use a ton of plastic. I mean, I'm not even going to sit here and pretend that I use a ton of anything. But as far as plastics go, is it bugs? Is it split tails? Like what kind of plastic?
Wigglers.
Little wigglers?
Anything that looks like a wiggler. If you're going to Simcoe, goby.
Gobies, I heard, are really good, especially by the mud flats.
Yep, gobies. I'm not too big of a plastic tungsten guy, just because it's kind of boring to me. But I will do it if I gotta.
I will say this, as much as I've hated on ice fishing, when you're sitting there using a beaded spoon and you're ripping that thing, getting it to cover some water.
Like it.
Oh, dude, and then it settles in and it's swinging.
Yep.
And then as it's swinging, you just boom.
Yeah, the beaded spoon's all about getting the fish fired up, because once you get it fired up, then if you got a Vexlar or a Markham or whatever, you can watch the fish fly up. You're in 20 feet of water, watch them come up off the bottom and chase the spoon as it's fluttering down.
Yeah, and they will.
Yep.
A lot of the times, me and me and a customer had a really good conversation about that. But a lot of the times, if you're sitting there and you can pull those fish up,
Yep, off bottom.
and then you get them going crazy, you don't even have to get back down to the bottom. You're just getting it back down to the middle. And once they're up and they're like eating like that, it does get a little crazy.
Yeah.
Especially when they're 12, 13,
Yeah.
14
Oh, yeah,
inches.
big. Yeah.
Now, Saginaw Bay is an interesting one. Saginaw Bay is one that I've only been to twice, both times out of the thumb.
Mhm.
I would assume if we go back up there, it'll be out of the thumb side. I guess it depends. Yeah, I guess it depends. We'll wait and hear.
Yeah.
We'll wait and hear how people are doing out
Yeah.
there. But Saginaw Bay is an interesting beast because it's nothing to go up there and find a big school of perch, and then the next thing you know, you're in some walleyes.
Yeah, I have really only been up there to walleye fish, and any perch wise that I've gotten has been a bonus.
But they're usually big.
Yeah, they're usually big. Yep.
Yeah. So, and then that's typically the same, kind of the same. Well, I mean, a lot of the times up there, we're catching them on our walleye stuff. That's how you know they're big.
Yeah, I haven't really went up there and targeted perch at all, but they'll bite a number 7 jig and wrap or a jigger.
It's hard to go up there. For me personally, it's hard to go up there and target perch when we've got the fishery that we have. I mean, it's right now it's been good on the American side. When we were younger, it was a lot of dinks. Like, I mean, you guys got to think. I mean, obviously, most of the guys listening know, but we went through basically 3 years of no ice, especially on the main lake.
Yep.
So it's been a while before we've been able to get back out there. I mean, I haven't been back to Mitchell's Bay because COVID.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just pulled out my handheld that I had to get some waypoints from over there when I was a kid. In 2014, I think, was one of the last times that I fished out of Luke's.
That makes sense.
2006.
It
I had
was
16 waypoints too, but it was a while.
I was going to say it was either 14 or 15 when we went over there, and we didn't even do the machine. We walked. We walked so far. Thank God we were 18, 19 years old. We walked so far.
Ask Parker how that went the other day.
You got one nice one for the gram. Congratulations, Parker, for your nice fish on the gram. Maybe I'll flash it in the video.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of the other thing. We got rid of the quad. I didn't really feel super safe on a quad out on the water. I haven't really the last 3 years I haven't been motivated to find a sled.
And walk and stuff, really good success, or walk and get to deeper water.
How are the crowds over there?
It's nothing like over here.
No.
And a lot of guys don't leave very close to shore, and people think there's no fish out far, but
that's where we always did our best.
Walk, they're there
alone. Like that's what we would just be walking. I remember the first time we ever went over there, we're just walking, and I'm like, dude, where are we going? Like everybody's fishing back there. There's got to be fishing between us. And then you set up and you just start ripping on 10 to 12 inches, and it's like, oh my God. And that was really before like our side was good. Like we wouldn't even think about perch fishing out on our side, and you were going over there catching giants. Now it seems like it's kind of evening out, whether, like you said, the tides are turning or we've got that those extra fish in those last probably 2-3 year classes, really, because the border was closed in 2020. So nobody was really ice fishing until 2022, I think it was, until it finally opened.
Yeah. Even when you go over there, I mean, most of the people fishing, honestly, are Americans, especially on the weekend.
I mean, that's how it is in boats, too. You go over and fish any spot over in Canada, and it's all MC numbers. There's very few ON numbers. But it's a different ballgame over there, from what I understand. If we have any Canadian listeners, please let us know in the comments like why that might be. But when we were at the show, I was talking to one of those guys, and I'm like, dude, we always crush fish like right in front of your guys' boat launches. Like, why is nobody fishing?
They catching off?
What? Yeah. He just said there's not as much access. Like, there's not nearly as many bait stores. It's a lot harder to get bait. It's a lot more expensive over there. It's more expensive to get a boat, gas, all that.
There really isn't much for access.
Even their boat launches, like I say that we're catching fish in front of their boat launches, but the boat launches are trash. They're dirt parking lots with I complain about Marine City's launch more than anybody. And that's like the Taj Mahal, if that was over on the other side of the river.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that also really helps when you're over there, is like there's not nearly as much pressure.
Yeah, no, there's definitely not.
There's also not as much information.
No. I went Sunday, and I don't know how many miles we walked, but it was a lot.
Yeah.
And the closest guy to us was probably, like, except for a couple stragglers, I'd say the closest pack was 2 miles away.
Dude. Oh my God, you guys were walking.
Yeah, yeah. But
It's worth it. When you get into them, it's worth it. Sunday was a tougher day, it sounded like.
yeah, Sunday water's still kind of dirty over there for the most part. It's stained in some areas, but it just ain't there yet.
Yeah, so that's literally what I was just about to ask you next. So you mentioned in the spring that a lot of the perch fishing has to do with watercolor. So do you like it when it's like, let's stick to ice fishing first and then we'll roll into spring, but do you like it crystal clear under the ice? Do you want a little bit of stain? I mean, you definitely don't want it muddy.
Well, I think at least with the beaded spoons, the clearer it is, the more you can draw fish in.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I mean, if you can see bottom, that's good. Sometimes over in Canada, though, even when it's clean, you still can't see bottom. It's not like over here because they always got pumps running or we're running or whatnot like that. But I'd say if you're in, let's say, 6 feet of water and you can see down 3 to 4 feet, you should be catching fish.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
If I can only see down less than, like, we popped a hole and we were in like 12 feet of water and I could see down 2 feet, and I told Parker just to quit drilling. You're wasting your time.
Yeah. Well, that Canadian side, like you said, it's totally different. Like even in the summer, you'll be over by us and we'll be in the blue water, and you turn that corner around the South Channel, and the farther that you get towards Mitchell's Bay, it starts to turn like a green, and that's even when it's clean.
Yeah.
It's just a totally different color over there. It looks like you're on a brand new lake.
Yep. Well, so does the shoreline.
Yeah, 100%. It's not houses and houses and houses and houses. No seawall, which there's probably a few walleye episodes we talked about that, why we would much rather fish Canadian water, whether it's the river or the lake. It's just way more natural. It's a lot easier on the fish. It's much more natural. Where here, you stand on the lake and look in, it's a seawall all the way around the lake for the most part.
Yep.
And just houses stacked one after another. Over there, it's all natural. Very few houses. Most of it is used for wind energy.
Oh yeah.
The
land of the wind turbines.
A lot of windmills over there. But hey, that's fine. We'll just take advantage of those resources. What's the watercolor on Simcoe usually like?
It's actually pretty clean, and to my knowledge, it was a lot more greener back in the day, and a lot of people say the fishing was better a ways back when they had no limit. I started kind of going over there right at the cusp with no limit to limit, but I don't know. I think it'd be hard to see it better than it is now, but I know it was.
Well, dude, the pictures
of
the pickup trucks.
Yeah.
They would fill. If you guys haven't seen them, they would fill because there would be no limit over there. There would be no limit, so they would fill up the literally beds of pickup trucks.
Oh yeah, it was unbelievable.
Full of giant perch. But the thing is like the locals, and you could speak more about it than I can. The locals don't care about the perch.
No,
like at all.
They perch open water, whitefish when there's ice.
Whitefish, any lake trout?
I don't know if they. I honestly have no idea.
Yeah, but I know they love whitefish.
Yeah, they love their whitefish.
Do the whitefish in like a separate area than the perch, or do they kind of intermingle?
From what I know, it's sort of separate areas, but they still catch. You still intermingle once in a while.
Yeah,
I've seen a whitefish get caught. I've actually whitefished one time, and we caught perch too. So.
Yeah, but it's a big whitefish, and that's something that's really funny. Is like when you go to Simcoe, majority of the guys that are out there perch fishing are Americans that are coming over there. Because the Canadian population, they just don't seem to care about the yellow perch for whatever reason. I can't figure it out.
Yeah, so when I went up the other day, you could see a big body of water. We're on a big body of water area, so you could see, besides the locals renting huts, I bet you there wasn't 30 people fishing in a 8-mile area.
Yeah, and it's some of the best fishing you've ever seen.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's crazy. And there's a lot. It's a big lake. Like we're not sitting here. This isn't like a small lake. There's a lot. There's a lot of room to cover. I mean, just the people that I know that go over there. You guys all typically fish different spots, whether it's you or Louie or Dean or whoever. Yeah. Different spots along the lake, different access points, different places to stay, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think too, just from the times I've been up there, it's the different styles of fishing and different classes of fish depending on where you want to fish.
Okay.
So like if you want to go and like I got friends that only target the biggest perch you can possibly catch up there, and it's typically tungstens. Typically, you wait around. It's just a grind day of fishing, or you can go up there.
What are they catching? 14s?
It'd be nothing to have a bucket over 12 inches. Yeah, or an average of 12 and a half for sure. Yeah, they're big. But then there's areas where you can just go and pound 9.5 to 11-inch fish one after another and be done in 2 hours. It's sort of what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, which is still, I mean, over 9.5 to get a bucket of fish over 9.5, and you know there's going to be a few in that bucket that are pushing 13.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So, what's the biggest one you've pulled out from over there?
Actually, my biggest fish has come from the U.S. side.
Over here?
Yep, my biggest perch.
How big?
I got one just over 15.
That looked like a walleye on the ice, dude.
Yeah, about 20 inches of water.
Wow, that would be something.
Yeah,
was that a while ago?
Probably 5 years ago. Yep.
5 years ago in the secret honey hole.
Secret spot.
That's a spot. Yeah, I've seen some big ones. I have yet to be over there and fish. I've seen some big ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's funny. That's hilarious to think about. All the spots that you've got to go and ice fish, whether it be because I mean, like that Mitchell's Bay class of fish is a different class of fish than we've got over on our side.
Yeah, even
they're usually bigger.
Oh yeah, the fish in Canada over here are typically way bigger, but I've been fortunate enough even just to go into St. Anne's a lot, and which is still Canada, but the fish there are even different fish than you catch by Luke's or Mitchell's or
Yeah. Well, St. Anne's is natives, right?
Yep, it's Wapu. Yep.
Yeah. So kind of a different ball game there. I feel like it used to be easier to fish over there.
Yeah. Airboat.
Airboat, yeah. Yeah, that's true too. I'm horrible, dude. I lost my train of thought. Oh, are you a big if you're using a jig and wrap or anything for perch, do you use any scent as far as like anise eggs or anything like that? Anise egg right on the bottom.
A lot of my buddies like spikes, but I'm a big anise egg guy.
I'm a big egg guy. Right on that bottom treble hook.
Yeah, red. The rest of the colors, you can just throw them in the garbage because you only need red.
Which is funny, too, because like when we use the beaded spoons and stuff, like orange is usually good. Chartreuse can usually be good.
Yep. And back on the beaded spoons real quick because I know you got a bunch in here. And McGathy's are probably my favorite, too, because I think he has some of the best cuts. And his spoons, just as normal gold and silver. His silver, for some reason, to me, I think it's lighter than a lot of the other makers, and it has some of the best fluttering action. But
lighter weight, you're saying?
Yeah, lighter weight.
Yep.
And they flutter a lot better. The way he cups it, I don't know what it is, but it seems to really get those fish fired off. But not only does a spoon color make it, or not spoon color, well, spoon color, bead color, but also I think he, for the most part, only paints, I don't know what you want to call it, but this part on all his are mostly white.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to paint them whatever color you want.
Yeah, so he's talking about, let's see if I can do this without trashing the whole set here. You see that little bit of white that's right there above the hook. Let's see. All right, I kept it all good. You see that little bit of white that's right here above the hook. So, like, we've got some diamond willows that are on the way. Diamond willow is just another version of a beaded spoon. And his are all painted up Wonder Bread.
Yeah, they paint like the gold different stuff, but I'm talking about where it's white here. Sometimes some guys make them red. And that's a pretty standard color. You get them in red a lot.
Yep.
But I mean, I'll paint them all different colors.
Just to see kind of what's going to catch their eye?
Yep.
Well, I mean, if you're sticking out, they're hopefully going to go after the bait that's sticking out. You know what I mean? And making a little bit of a difference. And that's actually a really good point because your tackle box always cracks me up when I look in there because there's always some shit that's modified.
I got a few spoons.
Oh my God. That was like number one when I was bringing spoons in the store. I was like, hey, Kody, bring your tackle box over here. I got to see what the hell we need.
Yeah.
Make sure it's the right. I mean, because that's the thing with ice fishing stuff. Like, I'm not trying to stock the whole store and have everything. It just doesn't make sense for us to do it. We're a little out of the way from the lake. But to have the necessities and have what everybody wants or what everybody's going to need, because, I mean, as of right now, there's really not another option between Fairhaven and Hall Road.
No.
I mean, there's Anglers Points out there on Hall Road, and they have a great inventory of all ice stuff.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, since we didn't have the ice, they don't have that Fairhaven spot. They brought the trailer over there over the weekend.
I seen that.
And they had some live bait and stuff like that, which I thought that was an awesome idea because as much like it's funny, dude. As much as people talk about like competition, like we need it.
Oh yeah.
Because there's more people fishing and there's more area like to fish than there are bait shops.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, that's good to have. But not only do I have those guys heading out to Anchor Bay or those guys heading out to Metro, but we get those guys that are heading over to Lake Simcoe. I had 3 guys come in yesterday that are heading up to Saginaw Bay. So it's like trying to carry a little bit of everything that you need.
Yep. And we're talking about spoons too. Something else I just thought about is don't be afraid to run. Like I fish with arrow rods.
Yeah.
80% only exclusively on Lake St Clair and Simcoe. I'll do it sometimes depending on the water depth. But I'm a big believer in like 6-pound test if I'm using a spinning rod and like 8 to 10-pound test even just for spoon rods, only because I think it changes the action of the spoon a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think they flutter a little better and flutter more instantly as soon as they hit the water. But the biggest thing, if I had to give a tip for spoon fishing, is I'll use green or yellow or orange line, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I do tie a 1 or 2 foot fluoro leader, but I use a uni knot because I don't like having a barrel swivel because it adds weight to the fall. So I use the snap with the barrel on it to tie to my spoon.
Okay, so not just like a plain snap?
Nope, not a plain snap. It's a snap and then a tiny snap with the barrel on there instead of having the barrel up farther.
Yeah, well, that will 100% see. Like that's a really good tip because when you're using stuff that's as light as this, whether it be, I mean, the tungsten you probably tie direct most of the time, but if you are snapping one on, like whether it's a tungsten or a beaded spoon or anything like that, a small dew jigger, a Swedish pimple, anything like that that's going to be super light, any of that extra terminal tackle that you add on. I mean, with a spoon like this, and especially if you're using like the smaller silver one, like you were saying, that literally the swivel itself is probably heavier than the spoon.
Yeah, especially some of the light diamonds and stuff, diamond willow.
The diamond willows, yeah, because the willows I don't have any in here right now. I think they're in the mail. But those are extremely light. Well, by the time this episode comes out, they'll be on the shelf.
Yeah.
But they're very small and very light.
And sometimes I won't even run a leader. I'll just run my orange or green mono right to my barrel swivel.
It doesn't seem to make too big of a difference.
I don't think it makes that big of a difference because you got to get the fish fired up, and when you get them fired up, they're not even paying attention to what your line looks like.
It's a lot different than open water. Like that was one of my biggest misconceptions when I was younger. Was like, oh, we'll just use, when I would go out walleye fishing, I'd tie on a little jig of plastic, or I'd tie on, something like that. Or when I'd go perch fishing, I would, ice fishing is a different game. Like you just said perfectly, you got to get those fish fired up. You want to get them in that feeding frenzy because with the weather and the temperature and the ice causing pressure on the water, those fish can get in moods. So you've got to get them to feed. You've got to get them to want to eat.
Yeah, for sure.
Otherwise, I mean, you're wishing.
Oh yeah.
But with that being said, I mean, we've got at least a half hour. Yeah, almost 40 minutes of ice fishing talk.
Yeah.
Let's get to some open water before we get out of here.
All the fun stuff you miss.
Dude, buddy. Yeah. I won't be missing out on that this year. I'm going to be spending more time in the store, less time guiding and more time fun fishing, because that was one bite that I didn't get on that was just absolutely ridiculous. You're talking about Lake St Clair, and we talk about how it's a world-class fishery. Last year, it really showed itself as far as perch go, and most of it was in American waters. And you're talking, limits of perch. And there was good fish in the Canadian water, because if you get over there, you can get your 50. You're on our side, you got to stick with 25. But I mean, I'm talking live wells full of fish, 10 inches plus, a lot of fish in that 11 to 12 inch range. And then it was nothing to catch a couple walleye in the mix, a 5.5 pound smallmouth in the mix. I mean, dude, it was incredible.
We were catching limits of walleye.
I get worked up just talking about it. They were catching fish, just casting blade baits and drop shots. I mean, it was like the most interactive and like fun type of perch fishing that you could imagine. Like quarter ounce blade baits and drop shots with little plastics on them and stuff like that. Like, you talk about having fish in a frenzy. Those fish were fired up, and as we get, it's already January. What is the date today? 21st. It's already the 21st. So by the time that this episode comes out, it's going to be the 27th. We're already towards the end of January. We're just over a month away from open water fishing. I mean, our derby starts March 1st, as long as we don't have ice flows.
Yeah, as soon as you can get in the lake, there's perch.
I was going to say that perch fishing was early last year. I mean, I'm talking into April and March. Yeah, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Middle of March.
So it's like that, that bite starts up in March. You've got the walleye going on. You've got guys chasing salmon, which.
Hey, salmon. Gonna have them.
We'll keep the salmon, but it's incredible. And to be able to have that fishery. Now, a lot of guys out there, especially guys fishing the American side. Now, I'm not going to tell you that people don't bring minnows into Canada. I'm not going to lie to you. But just know the rules before you start taking dozens of minnows over there, obviously.
Yep.
But you didn't even need them.
No. I last couple of years I've been playing around a lot with casting plastics for perch. Definitely works. Definitely need a lot of plastics, a lot of wasted money and trial and error. But the biggest thing it came down to for me was the rod. Yeah,
and go ahead, dive into that a little bit before we keep going, because you're 100% right.
So I had a lot of different types of rods that I tried for casting, and they all work and extend and work 90% of the time. But when you got bigger into perch casting, you realize that you either pull off a lot of fish or you just lose a lot of fish in general. And I was searching for the right rod, searching, and then I ended up testing or just trying a bunch of stuff he gave me to try, and I ended up playing around with a Mags 7.3.
The 7-foot medium moderate, right?
Medium mod.
Yeah.
Which I didn't even know there was a moderate, but
well, and that was kind of the thing, and like this isn't even like a PSA for Mags, which yes, we do have those rods here in the store. But it wasn't even that. It was we were talking to him when he was here about casting them and kind of the issues we were running into, because especially around here, a lot of what we do, and it's not all walleye fishing. I mean, we do a lot of bass, fishing. You've done your fair share of smallie fishing and all that, bluegill fishing, but a lot of what we do is like that medium to medium light. I mean, you'll use your light action rods, but they were always fast action, and you never really thought about it. And when we sat down and we talked with Pat, and we were just kind of explaining to him, and it ended up being the same thing with the search baits when we were walleye fishing for search baits. And the reason is, and I'll let Kody get more into this in a minute, but the reason is because a moderate, when you have like a medium light fast, your rod tip is going to go, but you're still going to have that backbone because it's fast action. So it's meant to snap back. When you go into that moderate side where it's not as fast, you get not just here, but you get here. Okay, if that makes sense, you get a lot more backbone to the rod. So what you're doing is you're letting your rod do a lot more of the work as opposed to you. So
Yeah, I always
because you were
tell
pulling them right out of the fish's mouth
yeah,
at
because I
first.
was telling everybody what you can feel, they can feel you. So if you hit that back wall on your rod so fast and that perch is just kind of grabbing it, or they hit it and kind of run and you feel it and yank right away, there's not as much, you don't have as much give and they don't have as much give. But with the moderate, everybody's got a little more give.
100%. And that was one thing when we went into our ordering this year. Not only the mags, because not everybody wants to spend, custom money on a rod. That was kind of what we looked into for our perch rods. So, like, if you were to come in the store and ask to see some of these perch rods and what we're talking about, a lot of them are going to be that medium light to light. Not as many ultralights, but it's because we're focusing more on the backbone of the rod. You want that rod to be able to bend over. And then, again, that's what we kind of learned when we were search baiting for walleyes or even live bait fishing. But when you want that fish to take it and you want them to have it for a second before they feel that hook, set in, that's where, you can mess with the actions of your rod, because they even have slow. Like, they have rods that just kind of go all the way down. And a lot of guys will use them to crappie fish and stuff like that because you can get a lot more leverage on the fish.
Yeah.
But that moderate action was awesome. And the reason that we wanted to bring up this open water segment was to really focus on like casting for these perch, doing something different, because you don't want to be caught over the border with a bunch of minnows. Believe me, I'll sell you as many minnows as you want. $6 a scoop, baby. But if you come out and you grab plastics, whether it's a small fluke tail or the wigglers, like, did you notice a certain body style was better than another?
It varied day to day. What surprised me is how big of a plastic a 12-inch perch will eat. Even an 8-inch
Like a
perch,
3-inch plastic or bigger?
4-inch.
So essentially like a full-size Lunker City.
Yeah, full. I mean, I wasn't using any Lunker City, but I imagine if you had the right color, it would be.
Yeah. The big thing with the plastics is you want something that's got no. I mean, it's no offense to Lunker City, but you want something that's going to move a little bit more on its own. Like, we've got some in from Berkeley, we've got some in from Z-Man as well.
Yeah.
But you want something that you can let it sit there, because it seems like, at least for me personally, it seems like a lot of the times that's when the perch will kind of bite, is when it's not moving as aggressively. But the current, because there's always currents, like out where you're perch fishing. Lake St Clair's got a ton of currents, even though it's a lake. But you've got it going from one river to another. The current's going to move that plastic down there, and I'm assuming that's what made drop shotting so deadly. And then again, they're not all under the boat. Like, you're targeting, I mean, you're sitting over massive schools of perch.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, they go far.
Once you figure out how to read the electronics on the lake, which took me a long time, it really killed the perch fishing for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I'll drive around for hours and not even drop a rod in the water.
You know what's funny though is, like, in the fall, and I have a lot of people that would come into the store and they would ask me about the live scope and like if it was kind of a cheat code for perch fishing. But in the fall, and I wonder if it's because the fall fishing is post summer, so there's still weeds.
Yeah, the fall, you might as well toss your live scope in the water.
Those fish sit right on the bottom. Like, I drove around one day for a half hour out there, over by Perchin Island and the Puce, driving in between there and the dumping grounds. And I was driving around with my live scope down for probably a half hour, 40 minutes, and I didn't see a single fish, but I saw boats set up fishing.
Yeah.
And I knew that there had to be fish. First spot that I set on spot lock, I tossed my rod over. I pointed the live scope and I tossed my rod over there. You just see them. You watch the whole bottom come to life. So if you're fishing weeds, whether it's spring or fall, if you're fishing big weed beds, don't get hung up in trying to find those fish. But what Kody's talking about is like the sand flats that you're sitting on because you're fishing like weed beds through the sand flats, correct?
I think most of the time in the spring, there are no weeds.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it could be in a weed bed in the middle of summer. I'm not sure, but they're not there at that time.
It's just sand.
Yeah, just sand. I mean, there's spots too that I know are sand. There's a spot that I haven't personally caught fish there, but I know they do good there, and I check it all the time. And it was so clean of water the one day I could see bottom and drove around, and it was just fair sand.
How deep was it?
16 feet.
Yeah, so 16 foot of visibility can make the fishing tough. It'll make fish do some weird things too.
Yeah, but you got to learn. You got to see what was down there.
Yeah, that was a big thing that when the ice was clear on Anchor Bay, it never made for good fishing, but it allowed you to see what you were fishing and where there might be something that's a little bit different. And it's like, okay, if we get, remember this or mark this, whether it's your handheld or on your flasher, mark this spot and return to it. Because it could be really good. And that's something that I like to take advantage of, especially in the river, because the water gets so clean that.
I was just going to say that. The
Yeah.
graveyard.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I like to see how the bottom sets up and where the drop-offs are and stuff like that, because that when we get a good rain and dirty water, there's going to be the big hens are going to move in there, or you're going to get a school of fish move in there. And that's another thing, guys. I mean, we talk about it all the time, taking an hour out of your day to do something different, and sometimes it's not even messing with the rod. I can personally tell you how many hours he's spent, not even with a rod in the water, but with his electronics. Because why would you spend $4,000 on electronics and not know how to use them? Right? Yeah. That was your big thing.
Yeah, I mean, and even for me, I mean, I don't even use them really to fish. I just use them to find fish. That's like people tell me all the time, oh, you got live scope, it's got to help you fish. Well, the way that I use it, I don't even fish with it. I mean, I could find the fish and turn it off and not even use it.
Well, I can tell you, and I know you could tell the camera the same thing. If you're fishing with 16 foot of visibility and you're in 15 foot of water or less, turn the live scope off.
Yeah.
Because those fish are going to feel it. Yeah. And it's something I've been kind of juggling with the last couple years, especially like walleye fishing and stuff in the river. But I have absolutely no doubt that those fish can feel that. Now, some days does it matter? Probably not. But there's definitely some days where it does matter.
Oh, yeah.
And like you said, once you know the fish are there, you'll catch them. Like, we trust ourselves enough as fishermen to catch them.
Yeah.
But it cuts the searching process. It cuts it down. And then you also can learn a ton. You can learn how those fish are reacting to your baits, whether it's walleye or perch. I mean, I know how many times have you thrown a drop shot, had a school of perch swim up, and you're like, oh, here we go. And then they don't even touch it.
Oh, a million.
Not the right plastic. We'll throw those in the fire, right?
Oh, yeah. Or just drop shot and hook angle.
Yeah. How you tie it to the line?
Tie the hook.
Yeah. When I first learned how to drop shot, dude, I never even paid attention to that, and I was fishing with my hook upside down. And I'm looking at this rig one day, and I'm like, why am I not getting bit?
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Big.
But yeah, paying attention to how that hook angle's sitting and how your bait sits. We always tell people, put your bait in the water before you drop it down to the fish. See what your bait looks like. See how it looks when you're twitching it, or like if you're jigging it. If your bait's sitting crooked and you go to jig it and it's coming up like this, or you're perch fishing like you said, even with minnows. Like, I watch so many guys, they'll just like throw a minnow on a hook and drop it down, and it's like, dude, that thing does not look like a minnow down there.
Yeah.
It's bent, or it's crooked, or it's double hooked, or whatever the situation is.
Yeah, definitely. I like them through the nose. Live bait.
But not through the brain. Right? Just through the nose. Like right here.
Not a perch pounder.
Yeah. Oh.
You don't have the fly one, do you?
No, we just have the fish skin ones right now. We'll have the fly ones in the spring.
Yeah. The fly one, the perch pounder, the fish skins, I think are the best, but the fly ones definitely hold up way better.
Yeah, especially when you're in like those, when there's smallmouth and walleye out there, they will tear up that fish skin. But hey, man, we've reached our time limit. We're just at about an hour. Guys, I hope you learned something. It was really fun for us to kind of dive into something different this time around, talk a little bit of ice fishing, talk perching, talk about the tungstens and these beaded spoons here. If you're looking for any of this stuff, obviously I'm going to shameless plug the store. It's what we're here for.
Are you getting ice rods in?
Yeah, we've got some St. Croix rods in right now, and we've got some Mags rods on the way. We've got some Mags Power Noodles, medium lights, and mediums. They shipped out this morning, so by the time this episode comes out, they'll probably be in the store. So if you guys are looking for anything like that, we don't have a ton of reels. We will have some stuff. But again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, please support the guys that are supporting us right now to save money on that insulated suit up to 25%. If you buy that suit within the next week, I'm not just throwing them out there for you guys. They work. But anyway, a huge thank you to the folks over at Whitewater Fish. Papa's Pilar Rum, Great Lakes Anglers Co. right here. I've been drinking a lot of their coffee to stay warm. Hopefully that money's going back to those big perch and walleye on Saginaw Bay.
Hopefully.
And then a shout out to the guys at Cortland Line. We've got some really cool stuff from Cortland Line coming this spring for all you walleye guys. They have custom colored lines. So we're going to have seafoam, pink, purple, and high-vis orange to go with our white and high-vis yellow for all of our walleye lines. And in bulk spools. So if you come and buy a combo from us, we'll spool it up with whatever color line you want while supplies last. But that won't be till probably March. So something, right?
Maybe a little walleye teaser at the end of the week.
Maybe. We'll see what happens. Other than that, dude, is there anything else that you want to leave these people with for perch fishing, ice fishing, anything like that? Obviously, guys, be safe.
Yeah, be safe. Don't be afraid to move.
Don't be afraid to move. Don't be afraid to reach out. If you guys need anything, you can find us on Facebook, Hook One Bait and Tackle, Instagram at Hook One, TikTok. TikTok's still alive, right?
I never got TikTok.
I don't think it got banned. We don't really do shit on there, but if you message us, we'll respond probably. Other than that, guys, we're going to see you next week. I don't even know what's in store for next week. It's been pretty crazy with the show. We're going to be heading to the Florida Keys here in February, so you'll probably get an episode with Allie and I down in the Keys. That'll be a totally different episode than anything, again, that we've ever done. We're looking to start 2025 off with a bang. That's it, man. You got nothing? Go find yourself some Pilar rum. Stay warm, you guys, and we'll see you next week on the Hook One Pod. Adios.